Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. If you've built a successful business, you know the truth. Your expertise is high value, but your time is finite. The question is, how do you sustain that success without sacrificing your most valuable asset? We believe that the next level of success requires a strategic pivot, a fundamental shift that moves beyond the old ways. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. This episode is brought to you by Valentix, your strategic growth partner. At Valentix, we believe that trust and authentic relationships are the only true currency in high-value business. We challenge the status quo by building an AI-powered client acquisition engine that enhances your human connection, helping you move beyond the slow growth of referrals. Our AI-powered systems eliminate the grind, allowing you to break through the noise, automate tasks, and free up your time to focus on transformative client impact. If you're ready to build a predictable growth engine, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're joined by Ernest Tavares, the founder of First Step Growth. Ernest's career journey is a powerful demonstration of strategic marketing and entrepreneurial drive, spanning from a data architect to a 10x marketer who has worked with agencies, startups, and enterprise companies. After realizing the immense power of combining data engineering principles with growth marketing, Ernest now leads First Step Growth, helping B2C founders in highly regulated industries such as healthcare and fintech achieve order of magnitude changes in their revenue. His insights into omnichannel marketing, strategic experimentation, and leveraging AI for massive scale offer a powerful blueprint for founders seeking exponential growth. Ernest, welcome to The Growth Shift.
Thank you, David. Happy to be here.
Now, your journey into marketing is anything but typical, right? You started as a data engineer. Tell us a little bit more about that foundational journey and how it went from data engineering to marketing, what really attracted you, and some of the lessons you learned along the way.
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes back to even before I started my career, my educational background. I studied marketing during undergrad at Wharton. But I didn't want to only have soft skills. So I also challenged myself to learn Python as well as like business analytics and scripting skills. And so upon graduating, I kind of had two skill sets. I had a marketing skill set as well as a data engineering skill set. And my first job was actually at an agency doing marketing work. And I realized that it just wasn't a great fit. I wanted to become more technical. I wanted to challenge the status quo, so to speak, in a very technical and programmatic way. So I decided to leave the agency world, and actually I worked for 3 years at LendingTree as a data engineer. I'm essentially assisting the sales and marketing leadership with being able to see, organize, and report on business data to help them make better decisions. During that role, I was fortunate to get exposure to, again, like a really solid data engineering skill set. We were able to combine Python, SQL, as well as Tableau to make really strong business intelligence that helped power the business.
So you started, when you were in college, you studied marketing, you studied data engineering. You started out of college, your first job in marketing, went back to data engineering. You came full circle, right? What brought you back to marketing ultimately?
Yeah, I think it was a realization that my best skill is actually with people, and it's building connections and building relationships. I consider myself a pretty good programmer, but in Silicon Valley, those are a dime a dozen. There are always going to be people who are far more technical, far more driven, and candidly better at coding than I probably ever would be or cared to be. So I kind of took that skill set and what I learned from kind of being a data engineer and essentially just applied that to marketing. And it's actually helped me communicate and train talent, people who wouldn't consider marketing as a career path because they think that it's not technical. I can actually attract that and help train them and put them onto kind of that path where, again, we're combining data science and data engineering skills with marketing to provide repeatable growth.
Interesting. So, marketing really is a lot of data, and being able to make improvements and the right decisions based off of historical data, whether it's through ads, through content, whatever it is. So what you're saying is that you're basically finding people who could be better marketers. They just or have found people that could be better marketers because of their experience with data. They just didn't recognize it. So it's showing them that path forwards. And this is a path that you found for yourself ultimately, right? One
Yeah.
that you pursued. And I mean, you were the head of growth for what, 3 different healthcare companies?
Yeah, so after I kind of exited my data engineering phase of my career, I decided to actually gain as much exposure to as many different industries as possible. I knew that I wanted to do D2C. D2C is a lot more reliant on the marketing kind of component. B2B tends to skew a little bit more towards sales. So I like that D2C, there's more pressure on the marketer and there's more pressure on performance marketers in particular to help drive the business. I chose healthcare because, well, it's an industry that is broad. Everyone needs healthcare. It attracts people from varying different walks of life, low income, high income, and all age ranges. And so I like that it's a general product that has mass appeal. I also like that it's very hard to market in a healthcare organization. So, for example, the marketing messages, they need to be HIPAA compliant. The data feeds that we send back and that we create with these ad platforms to help us get better results, those also need to be HIPAA compliant. And so it's actually allowed me to move very quickly in a space where people are usually forced to move slowly due to regulation.
I've got to say, I absolutely love the analytical thinking when it comes to deciding what direction you want it to go, right? I mean, this is all being driven by data. You're a data person, so it's what I should have expected, I should say, right? I love
Yeah.
that though, that you took the right approach based off of the data that was available and what you felt the best about, where you could perhaps have the greatest impact based off of how you felt about all of these things. So you've again, you've been the head of growth for 3 different D2C healthcare companies. That's pretty significant. Through that time, right? Through what you've learned there, through what you learned about marketing and data leading up to that time, what do you think was that growth shift moment, that biggest lesson or realization that perhaps paved the way forwards for First Step Growth as it is today?
Yeah, so that actually happened at a role in which I was a manager at eHealth. I actually followed a mentor who was helping me learn how to apply statistical methods to marketing. He was my mentor at LendingTree, and I decided to follow him and his team over to eHealth. And unfortunately, the team didn't have a great first year. The goals were set too high, and we weren't able to kind of push back. And so, unfortunately, it led to basically 50% of our digital marketing team being laid off, and the entire affiliate team was laid off. So, prior to that, I was managing both YouTube and Meta ads, but there was nobody there to manage affiliates anymore. And so that kind of came under my management. We had like a 2-person team managing that channel prior. And so I didn't know how I was going to be able to manage a program with hundreds of partners with spreadsheets. It would have taken me hours each day just to make sure that I'm making the correct optimizations. And so instead of just using what existed, I actually kind of leaned on my data engineering principles and decided that I could leverage a CPC bidding algorithm that the paid search team was using, apply it to the affiliate channel using the same core logic, and actually improve the results. So that was my hypothesis. I spent about a month writing a bidding algorithm in Python that basically just used linear regressions and a few other statistical methods to basically guess what a click was worth for us. And we were able to test and implement this bidding algorithm. And we got it to the point where it was essentially running bid updates once per week across a portfolio of hundreds of partners, managing $12 million in annual spend without anyone having to actually look at a UI or actually do any math. So that was definitely the growth shift moment for me, because once I had that bidding algorithm, well, I wanted to try to apply it to as many channels as possible, see if it would work. And I think that the main learning was all too often marketers focused on costs. They focus on minimizing CPAs. They focus on minimizing CAC, but they're missing the whole other half of the revenue side of the equation. And when you can actually combine cost and revenue, you actually can look at pure profitability and margin. And when you can optimize towards profit and margin, your results are going to be significantly better than just minimizing cost.
So, Ernest, I got to ask for the layman's terms here for the
Yeah,
listeners
no
out there who
problem.
may not know what CAC is or everything else as well, right? So, essentially, what you did in your position is you realized that there was too much data to be able to go through yourself and to make the right decisions in the right amount of time. So,
Yeah.
you ultimately built an algorithm that allowed you to reduce not reduce the cost of the ads that you were running, but to make them a little bit more accurate and efficient so that the cost was irrelevant because it was the return on investment ultimately that brought the results.
Exactly.
And with this, I mean, you leaned on your knowledge of data
Everything.
encoding, and you built everything out there. So, after that happened, what changed for you?
Well, then I kind of felt emboldened. I got extremely confident because now I felt like I had, secret sauce, so to speak, and I got very excited. And that's actually what pushed me to see if the same logic would apply to those three different D2C healthcare companies that I served as the head of growth for. And through that kind of experimentation on myself and in my career, it was a resounding yes. The first role that I took, I was the head of growth for an insurance Medicare startup called Connie Health. I helped them close their $20 million Series A, as well as expand to additional states. I also leveraged the same core logic that I had developed for the affiliate channel at eHealth and implemented, refined it, made it more customized to build basically a ping post bidding algorithm for Connie Health, which is a smaller version of eHealth. From there, I was pretty satisfied with my work, so I wanted to transition into a white hot industry or something that was a little more dynamic than Medicare. So I pursued GLP-1s, and that's where I did some of the most impressive work of my career. Within a span of 6 months, I was able to drive 10x ARR growth by really focusing on Google, Meta ads, influencers, and a few other channels. I was also able to hire a team of 10 during that period. And so, yeah, that was another example of how, just by focusing on profitability and margin, your results can be much better than just minimizing cost. And then in my last role at head of growth at Camir, it was very similar, except instead of getting patients, we're trying to get doctors to leverage an AI scribe product. And we did very similar work there, where essentially we started to focus on costs initially. Once we had costs under control, we moved to focusing on ROI as well as profitability.
So essentially, you had a problem. You built an algorithm which led to a solution. You thought you had a breakthrough and you realized this needs to be able to apply to other industries, to other companies. You took your time working at a couple of different companies. You proved that this method worked. You saw the results from it, and you decided to take a leap into entrepreneurship. Right? Recently, just a little over a year ago, you founded First Step Growth. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now today with the process, with the algorithms. Who are you working with, and how are you really driving that outcome then?
Yeah, so again, I really enjoyed being a head of growth. I like working with startups. I like being kind of there to help build a foundation. And I realized that I could probably work with 6 different founders at once as opposed to just one. So it allowed me to actually impact my ability to help founders drive solid growth, all the while also cutting back on the things of the job that I don't like meetings and too much bureaucracy. So it really allowed me to kind of just focus on the core skill and then multiply my impact by working with multiple founders at once. I've been super fortunate to work with a few Y Combinator companies. Legion Health in particular has been an amazing client for me. We've demonstrated really, really robust growth since we partnered with them in September. We do have a few other clients that are venture-backed. Nook is a savings app started by a bunch of ex-Coinbase engineers. We've been working with them since inception. And I think the fact that they're still a client with us after a year shows and speaks to the quality of our work.
Very technical. I think conceptually the audience understands that, you help with marketing, you help bring in business and leads and all of that. But could you perhaps, to make it a little easier to digest for the audience, do you have a story you could share with us? Maybe the client you just shared an example of, they've been with you a year. Where were they at when you started with them, and what did you actually do to help them bring more revenue?
Yeah. So Nook is a crypto savings app, and I love that I was able to leverage my experience from financial services from LendingTree to actually lend a lot of kind of initial growth marketing strategy to Nook. With Nook, I'd never run ads in the crypto industry before. So it did kind of fit the highly regulated and really hard to advertise kind of thing that I optimized for. However, it was actually really tough to get initial approval from Meta, Google Ads, Taboola, as well as Apple Search to run a crypto product. So the first month was really just getting regulation and getting compliance checked out. Once we were able to compliantly advertise on these platforms, we rapidly turned almost every channel that they could possibly advertise on in a matter of 3 months. So usually I'd start with Facebook and Google. But because Nook was really hungry and we really weren't sure what was going to work for crypto, we started with Taboola Reddit ads. We started with a few crypto website billboard ad purchases. We leveraged different styles of Reddit ads. We expanded into YouTube, Google. So we really tested a lot of different channels. And over the course of 6 months, we found that there were really three that were producing. So we kind of, from there, shut off all the four channels that weren't working. We decided to scale Meta, Apple Search, and Google. And since then, we have basically been able to spend less than $100,000 with this client and drive over $7 million of deposits over a year.
That's pretty profound. That's incredible.
And I feel like people don't believe these numbers because they are so dramatic, but you can just go and look at the CEOs of Nook's LinkedIn post.
I'm sure he's happy to tell anybody who asks him based off of those numbers. What do you think the biggest struggle is that many or most marketers might face with getting such a high return on ad spend?
Yeah, I think the main struggle is focusing on cost for too long. I think so many marketers just get stuck there. And especially performance marketers, where sometimes if you're an agency, you can't see the client's revenue all the time. If you're kind of as an internal employee, you might be in a spot where you can actually now link your costs to revenue outcomes. And so I think that that is probably, at least for performance marketers, the number one trap that people get caught in. They're just optimizing for minimizing costs for too long when actually they're leaving money on the table. And there are instances where it makes sense to spend more for a customer if they're going to give you more revenue down the road.
So don't be afraid to spend money, especially when it comes to marketing. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
revenue generating, right?
Yeah, and I'd say the other thing that I really sincerely have kind of believed in is that the data feeds are the most important thing. You can have amazing ads, you can have a remarkable level of platform expertise, but if your data feeds are optimizing for the wrong thing, you may as well be, spraying and praying or just shooting in the dark.
Ernest, you help companies grow rapidly, we could say, right? This is in the D2C side of things.
Yes.
When we look at your growth with First Step growth, right? This is a B2B play, client acquisition. This is one of the most challenging things that most consultants, agencies, service providers are up against. With the intelligence and the results that you have on the D2C side of things, how are you starting to apply your level of expertise to client acquisition for First Step growth?
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. I was really focused on execution last year. This year, I'm kind of taking more of like a sales and business development approach. So honestly, I'm building a plane as I fly it, just like a lot of my clients do. I'm figuring it out on the fly. But so far, doing great work and asking clients to tell their friends about it has been an amazing strategy for me. So we've been very lucky to grow organically through referrals. I will say, I do enjoy hopping onto podcasts as well. We have gotten a few leads for me just putting my name out there and kind of being out there on different podcasts. But I would say just leveraging my network. I'm very fortunate to have a lot of friends and colleagues who work in VC as well as PE. And oftentimes, one of the biggest needs that venture-backed or PE-backed companies need is somebody who's skilled at growth marketing and somebody who can maybe turn around a sinking ship or build something from scratch that can move the needle dramatically in weeks, not months or years.
Incredible results and great relationships lead to good referrals. A lot of consultants and professionals are in that same position, right? Business has, and you're a little bit earlier, so I wouldn't say the same position. You're growing rapidly. You're getting incredible results for clients. A lot of consultants today are in a position where, they're starting to feel like their network is tapped out, right? They're starting to diversify and look for more direct client acquisition methods. You're growing fast. Do you think that making a shift into more direct client acquisition is in the near future for you, or do you foresee sustainable growth, or let's say manageable growth, with your current approach through networking and relationships?
You're talking to a 10x head of growth, so no, organic growth is never enough. I do plan on actually investing some of my business funds into either testing some B2B leads through purchasing. I do feel that there will be a point at which my little business will kind of scale beyond my network. And so I don't want to not have anything in place when that time comes. So while I am having great results from referrals in my network, I'm also trying to slowly build out more of a consistent paid leads approach as well.
As someone focused on 10x growth, then for those listening in the audience who are still trying to figure that out for themselves, those first couple of steps when it comes to B2B client acquisition, lead generation, can you share a little bit about those first steps that you're taking and where it is that you're starting to maybe give them some guidance?
Yeah, I think and again, I'm going to answer a bit more as a marketer than kind of a founder, but SEO, is kind of table stakes for B2B. I think being able to rapidly just produce case studies is kind of, again, table stakes for a lot of consultants. I had a enterprise client reach out to me last week and they were interested in my service. Luckily, I had, case studies that I could kind of send them that could, basically show them, hey, we can spend $500,000 a month, no problem. In fact, here are a few examples of us doing that. And so, yeah, I am actually trying to partner and searching for other sources of good leads. I will say it's a very fragmented industry. There are a lot of players in the space. Yeah. And so I'm trying to proceed carefully. The last thing I want to do, is enter a business partnership with the wrong lead gen partner.
I think a lot of listeners have been burned before. As you said, it's fragmented. There's a lot of players out there. It makes a lot of space for people who maybe can't live up to the expectations that they set. So definitely be careful seeking out partners. Absolutely. Ernest, you're growing fast. You're data driven. AI is playing a big role in what it is that you do and your plans for growth. As a marketer, as a 10x growth marketer, where does AI give you the most advantage today?
Yeah, I would say being able to scale really rapidly without having to add additional headcount. I've kind of worked my way up the marketing ladder from an analyst all the way up to head of growth. So I kind of know what to expect from an analyst versus a manager. And I would say the AI use cases for me have been generally really useful for kind of the entry level marketing work. So two use cases for us that we use weekly, if not daily, are basically leveraging AI. There's a program that Meta acquired called Manos to basically be a creative strategist for us. We ask our clients who their competitors are. We ask our clients to tell us a little bit about their company. And then we basically take that directly from the client and train this model to basically go and weekly find different examples from competitors from that client list. And then we'll then work with an internal design team to kind of modify or personalize them for that client. So just kind of being able to always have an agent out there looking for fresh competitive ads has been a massive kind of time saver and unlock. The other thing is just reporting. I would say that we were building an AI-driven company before AI was really kind of on the scene. And so it's really just helped us do the things that we were doing already more efficiently. I don't need to manually access all of these ad platform reports anymore and copy and paste them to some spreadsheet. We have an agent that will basically plug into any ad account, pull a spreadsheet, and kind of report it in a nice client-facing way each week. And I would say those have been the two biggest use cases for us. If I'm being completely honest, those two things are a full-time 40-hour-a-week job.
So you're growing without headcount. You're using AI for research as well as reporting. I haven't heard anything about creative design when it comes to marketing, right? Are you using it? A lot of people are thinking AI is going to solve a lot of problems for them and make their creative design and thinking a lot easier. You're laughing at that a little bit. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah.
Does AI actually help with creative at this point?
I feel like the word of 2025 was AI slop, and I kind of have to stand by that. I would say that there were definitely instances that personally the platform that I think is leveraging AI the best is Meta, bar none. One feature that we have been testing is basically we'll upload a design that a human made, and then with a couple of clicks, we can turn that design into 10 different unique ads. And it'll basically just swap out things like the background. It'll swap out different people. The issue is that I'd say about half of them are terrible. So bad I would never want a client to even see it, much less, a consumer. And so that is something that we're very excited about, but we're kind of waiting for kind of development to catch up. I would say the one thing that we definitely have tested last year that we're just not ready for prime time yet is AI videos. We have been tried to, basically replace a UGC person with an AI actor. And while we had some success, the level of quality wasn't there that I would feel comfortable, putting a client's brand. And so I do think that is a massive unlock, but it's not quite there yet. And I think designers they shouldn't be too worried. I think human designers, at least in the loop, or at least being the QA for taste and quality, will be here to stay, at least for the near term.
Yeah, too much AI slop out there from people throwing something together and thinking that this is going to solve all my problems. This is great. It's making it easier. Easier doesn't mean better, right?
Yeah.
So, as a 10x growth marketer, right, someone who is really highly focused on quality of content and creatives, and as part of that marketing process, where do you think that line is right now that shouldn't be crossed when it comes to using AI as part of the marketing strategy and design, or we should say more the intelligence behind it, right? Not necessarily just a strategy, but the copy, the creatives. Where's that line that we should stay far away from?
I kind of work, it's a dynamic line. And I think it depends on the client. I've partnered with people who are willing to take more creative risk. They are maybe willing to run something that doesn't follow their brand guidelines because the performance is there. Now, for that type of client, go ahead. If you're okay with the way that this looks and it continues to perform, we can test it. We'll continue testing it. But there are other clients who might be a little more mature. Maybe they do have some brand equity that might be damaged by just throwing up like some haphazard kind of AI ad. And so I really think that line, it depends on what the client and kind of where the client's brand is just regards to maturity. The less mature a brand is, probably the less AI slop you should be using.
So it comes down to the client, right? What their tolerance is, what they're willing to try, what they're willing to test, right? As you said, if somebody has a great reputation, a couple of bad campaigns or off-brand things aren't going to ruin that. But for a newer company trying to build a brand and a reputation, you can't lose that trust, right? Ernest, your story covers data-driven marketing, strategic experimentation, and the pursuit of exponential growth. For the listeners out there who are navigating their own growth shift, what is the single most important piece of advice that you would leave them with about challenging the status quo and making intentional decisions for long-term success?
Specifically related to marketing, David?
Specifically related to business in general, entrepreneurship. How should people be thinking and making decisions when it comes to their growth and success?
Yeah, for me, entrepreneurship, it's actually quite an emotional thing. There's just a level of seriousness that you need to bring to each day when you don't, have an employer signing your paychecks and, you kind of have that security. So I think just kind of being uncomfortable with the unknown is definitely a skill. And I think personally, I mean, this answer is not going to surprise you at all, David. It's very in line with most of the other things I've been talking about. Try to focus as little on the emotional aspects of the business as you can, and as much on kind of the quantitative, whether it be financial, whether it be customer reviews, aspects of the business. Because I personally, you can go down a rabbit hole with kind of the emotions and kind of, it can pull you in different ways and it can change based off of, just kind of what's going on with your life. Some advice that I'd have to other entrepreneurs is to kind of just really, focus on the fundamentals, focus on what you can control, and worry about the things that, are outside of your control. I'm fairly early on, and over the last year, I have had clients who I was really excited about, set them up, did a ton of work, all to find out that it wasn't a great fit. Initially, those really kind of hurt in my first year. But I think kind of developing tougher skin over the last 12 months and kind of just knowing that that's a part of the game, that's a part of the business. Clients will churn. It doesn't matter if you're doing great work. If you're doing poor work, then it wouldn't be a surprise when they churn. But yeah, just kind of bringing a level of flexibility and agility to each day, knowing that this is a very dynamic type of arrangement. Continue to do great work for your clients and hopefully keep them happy and they'll stay. But there will always be people who, you just aren't the right fit for. Don't let that kind of beat you up.
Ernest, thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights with the audience today. For anyone listening who might like to learn more about First Step Growth, what would be the best way to find you?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's just firststepgrowth.com. And if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, again, my name is just Ernest Tavares. If you want to reach out to me via email, my email is Ernest, first name, at firststepgrowth.com.
Great. Thank you again so much for joining us on the Growth Shift today.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Another powerful conversation on the Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on The Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.